Welcome to Tonka Talk. This is Natalie Webster. We talk about the ways people create community and connection, but on Fridays, I share my personal story of growing up in Scientology, how it impacted my family, and how we were able to escape and life sense afterwards, how I was able to find true community and connection. And I'm excited to share that my sister Lana is joining again this week.
Hello.
Lana, obviously, being we're sisters, we grew up together, grew up in Scientology, and this is the first time she's ever talked about her time in Scientology. We're going to be focusing on the part of our life when we were in what's called the C organization. And the C organization is like the paramilitary branch of Scientology. It's where middle management and upper management is. You sign a billion-year contract because the idea is you come back lifetime after lifetime to work for Scientology. Where we left off, I think we're on part 5 here of this story. And if you didn't listen to the earlier episodes, you can go ahead and go back, but you can also jump right in here. And we're going to try to be good about defining things as we move along so that if you didn't listen to earlier episodes, you know what we're talking about. Where we left off, Lana, you were at the international base. So you were at international management. And the last time we were chatting, you were sharing how you became friends with Roanne Hubbard, who's L. Ron Hubbard's granddaughter. And she was treated differently in the C organization for obvious reasons, and you kind of would get in trouble. And I had been training. I was in Los Angeles training to be a staff member for the Church of Scientology in Hawaii. And I was 15 years old then. And I had shared earlier how I had dropped out of school to work for Scientology, which is very common. Wouldn't you say there's not value on education?
No value at all.
Only if you're studying Scientology or the teachings of L. Ron Hubbard.
Correct.
So it's common, I would say, when you meet, maybe not all Scientologists, just depends on when you got in, but definitely C organization members. And sometimes we'll refer to it as the C org, which is short for C organization. I try to give the full, what it is so people understand if they don't know anything about Scientology, but sometimes it's easy to slip back into. The cult speak. Now, so catch us up. You are at the international base, which back then was a confidential location that everyone knew about except Scientologists. It's in Hemet, California, and only certain people get to go there. There's a very extensive approval process and interrogation you have to go through to make sure you meet the qualifications. Wasn't it even down to weight?
Not that
like you couldn't be, maybe that was just an OSA, an Office of Special Affairs thing. But I remember hearing that to go to the international base, like you couldn't be a certain amount overweight or something.
I never heard that. It makes sense. I can see
them doing that.
Yeah,
completely. Because it's a lot about appearances and how things look. And, that is one thing. That's a theme in Scientology when we were growing up and even into adulthood, where you need to put on this face or this front of how great things are.
Exactly.
How good things are going, even when they're not, because you need to set a good example as a Scientologist. And even saying those words again makes me want to vomit in my mouth a little, because that was thrown in our face so much. Then it became, you need to set a good example as a C organization member, which really is just a way to control. So catch us up. You're there, you're working on the base. What's going on?
So they have the CMO has their own EPF.
Yeah. And again, this is the Commodore's Messenger Organization, which is a very high up organization in the Sea Org. You have to be you have to have certain qualifications to go. You're considered a messenger of L. Ron Hubbard. You are delivering his orders. I always thought of them as and they were referred to as messengers for short, as really just being a bunch of enforcers.
Yeah.
And most of them were teenagers, if not even younger. And I think in large part because of the stricter qualifications that they had to be in the Commodore's Messenger organization, if you got an adult, they've already been through some stuff and done some things that would disqualify them.
Yep.
So you're up there, you're working at the international management level, and what happens? How do you end up going from there back to Los Angeles?
Well, I was on the estates project force at INT, and I was very unhappy, very lonely.
And you were, what, 15 then?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
Very hungry. And
literally hungry. We're not talking about you were hungry for adventure.
Yes, I was literally hungry.
And why was that? Because
food was terrible. Mm-hmm. And the breaks were very short.
Mm-hmm. So you didn't have a lot of time to go eat when you could eat.
Right. And when there was a canteen, and so you could buy extras. Like it's in the desert, so Gatorade was really important for me, since I was doing estates projects.
You were doing physical work.
Yeah.
But you had to buy your own Gatorade with your own money.
Correct. Which I didn't have.
No, because C organization members are making like $40 a week. And when you're on the estates project force, which is like boot camp, it's like half that.
Yeah. If you get anything at all. Mm-hmm. And so anyways, I got into their the CMO INT and his wife. Mm-hmm.
And that's the commanding officer of this Commodore's Messenger organization. So this is a very, very senior person in the C organization.
Very. They had a huge bowl of change in their room, and I was in charge of cleaning their room. So one day I took some change, got myself a Gatorade, and before I left the INT base, you have to do a sec check, which is
and that's a security check, which is like an interrogation. You're asked not only have you done this or that, but even like, have you had thoughts about this or that? Do you have any negative thoughts about David Miscarriage? Have you committed any? What they're looking for is anything you might have done while at the international base,
right,
against the church.
Yeah. So I took some change, got some Gatorade, and I confessed to that before I left. There was another thing too, which I can't remember, but I confessed to it.
Yeah. So you were pretty much honest. Yep, I did this. I took some change because I wanted to get a Gatorade and I was hungry.
Yep. I just wanted to get it over with, and I didn't want any secrets, so I just admitted everything. They asked me questions about Roanne and our relationship.
So this was in your interrogation, which you were doing to stay at the international base?
No, I had to leave.
This is when you were leaving to go back to Los Angeles.
Correct.
To still be a Sea Org member. Mm-hmm. So in this interrogation, you come clean about, here's what I did. I took this money. And then what happened? Are you a Minnesotan looking to escape the Minnesota winter, wanting to head to a tropical destination? Well, an unoccupied house is a vulnerable home. That's why here at Shortlist Properties, we don't just help you buy or sell real estate. We have a Snowbird division, a Snowbird concierge dedicated to using an extensive checklist to keep an eye on your home while you're away enjoying yourself. So you don't need to worry about frozen pipes, potential water damage, or mold. Our Snowbird concierge can even restock your fridge before you return or drive your car to preserve the battery. Have peace of mind while you're away. Visit shortlistproperties.com to learn more about our Minnesota Snowbird Services.
And then so I got taken to the PAC base. Mm-hmm. And
these are the blue buildings in Hollywood. If you've ever seen programs about Scientology, they often will share about those, and that's where I was. That's where I was living and working at the time.
Mm-hmm. So I got sent back. I got sent to the regular EPF again.
So you had to redo the Sea Org member boot camp,
correct?
Which you had already done before,
correct?
And this is because you were busted because you were in trouble for stealing.
Correct.
Change to buy a Gatorade because you didn't have any money at 15 and you were dehydrated and hungry.
Yes. Very.
When you're doing this interrogation and you're sharing like this is why I did it, which in Scientology would be considered a justification for what you did. When and people who are listening to this, I know it's a lot to process, but we kind of really want to share the mindset too. In the eyes of Scientology and the other Sea Organization members, if you want to leave or you have any negative thoughts about Scientology or anyone in Scientology, it is because you committed crimes against those people. That is completely their belief. So they're always looking for that. There's never any responsibility taken on the side of the church. It wasn't like someone sat you down and was like, okay, what's going on, where you felt that this was your only option to take this change. There's that compassion's not there. And again, you're a minor, you're 15 years old. At that point, was our mom in Florida or was she in LA?
I think she was in LA.
So there was a period of time where our mom was gone and she was in Florida doing Scientology services for quite some time. But then she came to Los Angeles and she was working for the Manor Hotel, which is where Celebrity Center International is. That's where like Tom Cruise would go, where John Travolta would go. And it's not far from the Blue Buildings, the PAC base. So you're back in LA, you're redoing the Estates project for us. And then where do you go?
And then I ended up in PAC Base Crew, PVC.
And this is an interesting twist kind of here. So Lana went from the top of the Sea Organization command chain, if you will, to a degree, and was busted all the way down to what would be considered the lowest of the low organizations. The Pacific Base Crew, which was the organization within the Sea Org that took care of the buildings, the grounds, where people's berthing, where they would sleep, things like that, would coordinate that.
Right.
So you're busted down into this. In the meantime, I had been training in Los Angeles, but I was supposed to be working back in Hawaii. I was replacing my best friend at the time. Bruce had joined the Sea Organization and he recruited me to replace him in Hawaii, because you have to replace yourself, because even though you're there, quote, as a volunteer, it's a contract that's 2.5 years or 5 years and mandatory roll calls and all this. It's how Scientology gets out of paying the people who work for them a fair wage, because they're considered, quote, volunteers.
Right.
With a mandatory contract. That's still happening today, which is just so crazy to me. So I'm in Los Angeles. I go back to Hawaii at one point and a lot of stuff went down. I wasn't doing great there. And you were in Los Angeles by then. Our mom was in Los Angeles, and I decided I'm going to go back and I'll join the Sea Organization too. So at least then I would be with you and Mom. And there was nothing for us left in Hawaii. And if you listen to our earlier episodes about this, we talk about how our mom had married our grandpa and it was just chaotic. So I go to Los Angeles and I'm like, when I was in Los Angeles training to work at the Church of Scientology in Hawaii, I had to do what's called work study, meaning I needed to work because my organization in Hawaii wasn't paying for my room and board. So you go for training, but you still have to pay for room and board so that you can study full time. And if your organization is not paying, you have to actually work in the dining room, in the galley, as they called it. And that's part of the Pacific Base Crew. So when I went back to join the Sea Organization, I thought, I actually enjoyed that. My work study experience, even though it was a lot of hard work, I enjoyed it. And I liked working with those people. And Pacific Base Crew, or PBC as we're going to call it. Again, I don't know that there was an organization in the hierarchy of the Sea Org that was lower. And I think, and if you're an ex-Scientologist or ex-Sea Org member and you know differently, reach out and tell me. Definitely at that time, and maybe even ever since, I think I was the only person to join the Sea organization and join the pack-based crew. Most everyone there, in fact, everyone I knew in there was busted down into that organization. But that's where I'm like, hey, I think I'm going to join here. I like the people. And I'll tell you what, they were fun.
They were really fun.
They were really
how
fun.
to have fun while working.
Completely. They were a bunch of pirates, a bunch of pirates and bums.
Yep.
Because these are people who had gotten in trouble in this organization, and they were all busted down to something that was meant to be this kind of demeaning thing or type of work. And I never saw it that way. I just thought, if I'm going to be here doing this, I don't really want a huge amount of responsibility. I was probably the world's laziest Sea Org member. It's interesting because you hear, we follow a lot of other podcasts, and I've connected with so many Sea organization members since leaving, and many of them were in upper management, and many of the whistleblowers on Scientology were in international management, and all these things. I'm like, I'm over here like, I really didn't do anything. So I'm thinking like, I'm joining this organization. So I start the Estates Project Force, and fairly quickly I get pulled off of it. Because somebody in middle management said, well, Natalie, you never replaced yourself in Hawaii as a staff member. So you can't just go into the Sea organization without replacing yourself there. And I'm like, look, I'm 16 years old. I'm a minor. I was like 16, 17 then. My mom's here. I have nobody back in Hawaii that's an adult. So you want me to go back as a minor with no one to take care of me? I knew it was like common sense would dictate for most. Why would you send a minor back by themselves? But this has never stopped the Sea organization from moving kids around or moving parents far away from where their kids are.
Yep.
But at the end of the day, they knew that it was it's kind of a legal requirement that you need to have a guardian.
Yep.
And so she pulls me off the Estates Project Force, says that I can't do it until I get replaced in Hawaii, which I refused to go back to Hawaii at that point. I'm like, no, my mom's here, my sister's here. So what I end up doing, the Estates Project Force is made up of, what is it, 5-6 hours of study?
Yep.
Where you study Sea Org member training, and then the rest of the time you're doing physical labor.
Right.
Like a lot of physical labor.
A lot.
For hours, 7 days a week. There's like no time off. So I think, well, if I'm working for the pack-based crew in the galley and the dining room, that's physical work. And then I would go on my course time and I would do the same courses that Sea Org members in boot camp did. So I did my own version of the Sea Org boot camp to get into the lowest of the low organizations that you can be in. Because again, I thought they were great. Back then, Lana was there, but she had been busted there. And I think Shane Woodruff was the commanding officer then. It changed a few times. There was an Italian guy.
Franco Bernardi.
That's right. And then the chef at one point became the commanding officer. Ian, I don't remember Ian's last name. Did not like him.
He was a slime ball.
He was creepy. He made many of the younger girls feel uncomfortable. I'm not saying that he did anything. I'm not aware.
Can we share dirt on him on this show or no?
Well, why not? It's factual.
It's factual.
Okay.
Yeah, so he was slimy like that. And he was that way to me too, because him and his wife were swingers.
What?
They were swingers, and they go out on their day off.
Yeah.
And do swinger things.
What?
Have sex with other people, not your partner.
How did you know this?
Word gets around in PDC.
That makes a lot of sense.
It does.
It really
He was a
does.
pervert.
Yeah, he definitely had that pervert vibe. And his wife, wow, that surprises me, but it doesn't surprise me. Mm-hmm. And again, remember, we're young teenage girls at this time.
Yeah.
And he just was really like the leering looks, and he would make comments. It was total sexual harassment.
Totally.
We didn't have the words for that. And it wasn't an environment where you had anyone to go to and say, hey, this is happening, or he's making me feel this way. You would be, because there's no victims.
Right.
There's no victims in this organization. You must have done something to cause that to happen.
Exactly.
Especially when it comes to sexual harassment or sexual assault. That is crazy. That's why he got busted then.
Maybe. I don't know why he got busted to PBC, but...
no, he was doing this when he was in the PBC.
Yeah.
Wow. That is crazy. And what, that's a different way to live for sure. But what you need to understand is to do this in this environment. I mean, that's the equivalent of, I don't know, going to mass in the Catholic Church and having sex on one of the pews.
Yeah, it's really...
it's not allowed.
How can you get away with that?
Yeah.
With the Sea Org schedule.
Yeah, and what time off? Because rarely got time off. Wow, that's just blowing my mind right now.
Sorry, mind blown.
But it explains why he was so creepy again. And it kind of takes me back to, there's, again, whether you're a child or you're a teenager in Scientology, you are a spiritual being in a small body. They don't differentiate that you're a child or that you're a teenager. There's no accommodations made for these things, not really. And that is how a lot of abuse ends up occurring, because no one's really keeping track. Remember, too, there was another guy who was not a Sea Org member. He was like hired help. He worked in the dining room. Victor. He was a Hispanic man. I think he was like one of the cooks downstairs. Anyways, he was one who really would make inappropriate comments and stuff to the young girls who work there. And again, nothing got done about it.
Right.
I remember even saying something about it because he wasn't a Sea Org member. He was working there. He was being paid to work there.
He was hired staff.
Yeah, and nothing got done about it. It's like nobody cared if you were being mistreated in that way. You must have just done something to make it happen. And later on, I won't get into it now, but with my own sexual assault that was completely covered up by the Sea Org, I'll share about that as we're kind of doing this in kind of a timeline order, and this happened a few years later. So I will be sharing that in the future. But it kind of sets the stage that this was the kind of environment that we were in. You really had to watch out for yourself. At the same time, there were some really, really good people in there. And at this pack-based crew, I felt like we were more of a team, more of a group. There was a sense of loyalty.
Yeah.
Just kind of watching out for each other. Remember the plumber, Paul? He had a beard. He had all these tattoos.
Oh, tattoo.
Yeah, tattoo was the name that he went by. Everybody kind of had a handle because they used the radios. I don't think I had one, though. But that's where I met my first husband. So we're there where I'm doing these courses so that I can be a Sea Organization member, even though I was already taken off of boot camp. The only one in the history of the Sea Org, again, to, I think, join the organization that everybody else has been busted down into. But I meet these people when I'm doing my work study program, and I'm like, these are my people. They were fun. They had a great attitude. It was the type of work we were doing.
Yeah, they always won the birthday game.
Yeah, which was a game within all Scientology organizations where everybody has a statistic. And the whole goal each week, if your job was to write letters and you write 50 letters one week, you would better write at least 51 letters the next week. The whole thing is every week your statistics needed to be up, needed to be moving in an upward direction. And if you wanted any time off, you would only, if you got it, your statistics had to be up or you didn't get it. So it's very common. Most Sea Org members work 7 days a week. We had Sunday mornings where we could do our laundry and clean our room.
Maybe
if you had that. Some people weren't even allowed to do that, but that was kind of what I liked about working in the pack-based crew is we did. It's kind of like it was these group of people.
Misfits.
Totally, completely. You got busted out of a higher organization. But I find it so interesting that in my entire Sea Org career or even time in Scientology as a parishioner, they were probably the least pretentious group of people that I think I ever met. And when I look back on, because you and I have talked about this, there's so much crazy and there's so much abuse and things to work through and unpack. But at the same time, we still had moments of joy where we'd create our own fun. And this is a group of people that knew how to do that.
Yeah.
And it's where I met my husband and got married at, I was 17. And you were there. You were there then, right?
I was somewhere on the PAC base when you got married.
Yeah, because you were at my wedding. And so at 17, in the C organization, this is not a rule for all Scientologists, but in the C organization, you are not allowed to have sex unless you're married. You're not allowed to what they call heavy petting unless you're married. So what happens in the C organization is you don't date, you marry. You get married and then you get divorced. You get married and you get divorced. For some people stay together, but it's a whole different type of world. One of the reasons too, I wanted to get married as well. One, it was just what you did. And at 17, I was almost an old maid.
Right.
Is you then, when you're married, you get to have your own room. Not apartment, not house, room. And that was better than sharing a room with 15, 20 other women with bunk beds stacked 3 high.
Right.
Which is what it was like.
It smelled like bed bugs.
Yeah, exactly. So Dan and I, that was my first husband. We got married. We were able to get our own room. And we still shared a bathroom. Our bathroom connected to another married couple. So we shared that bathroom, but that was such a step up from being in a dorm with 15, 18 other women sharing one bathroom or having to go to another building to go to the shower in the bathroom. When you were living at the PAC base again, then in the blue building, so then you were back in a dorm?
Right.
You had to have been because you weren't married then.
No.
Now, again, when you're in the C organization, there's no time. You're not going Friday night out with your friends. It's like you would spend maybe 20 minutes together at lunch. Maybe you have 30 minutes at dinner if you're lucky.
You mean with your partner?
With your partner or with your friends or getting, whoever you're trying to get to know. I don't even remember Dan and I mean, it's just how it went in the C org. You get engaged really early. One of my good friends was 15 and she was married.
Wow.
It's just crazy to even think about now, but it was just super common. How old were you when you got married?
18.
You were 18.
I made it to 18.
And I got married when I was 17. And I remember this is when Mom was in California. And I needed her approval if you're underage. So she had to go to the courthouse with us to sign off on us getting married. Dan was 2 years older than me, I think. So he was probably 19 and didn't need that. I do remember that day, Mom being really pissed off because she had to take time off of her post, her job, because it doesn't matter what your job is in the C organization. It's this, you're kept in a state of fight or flight all the time. If your job is to wash dishes and you slow down, and you're not washing as many dishes as you did the week before, the entire planet might fall apart. I mean, how would you describe how that felt?
You mean like if your stats were down, you
Yeah.
didn't produce as much as the last week? It depends what organization you were in, but for me, it was you were frowned upon by almost everybody. You didn't get to celebrate with the rest of the org if they won the birthday game or if they went out to the movies or whatever.
Yeah, which was few and far between. But at Pack Base Crew, I feel like we went to the movies maybe a couple times a year.
A couple times a year.
And we say that like it's such a great thing. Like, oh, it was cool. We went to the movies like twice a year.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a big deal when we went.
But that pressure to produce.
Yeah, the pressure to produce is everywhere all the time.
And it doesn't matter what your job is. It's like there's no different, blah, blah, blah. There's no difference. Everything is this chaotic emergency.
Yes.
Even,
yes.
and I'm not joking when I say if your job was to wash dishes and you're washing less dishes than you did the week before, your intention is counter to Scientology. You were trying to stop Scientology.
Yep.
That's how it pretty much was put to us. If you don't do your job, not just do your job, but do your job to a certain level.
Yeah.
Then you're just this piece of crap and, you get in trouble. And then when you do your job and you get your statistics up higher, it's like, well,
you have all kinds of freedom that, freedom as much as you can in the Sea Org. Mm-hmm. You can go to the outing. You can maybe slack off a little, because your stats are up, so you won't get in trouble.
Yeah. And this changed. Now, the time period that Lana and I are talking about was, what was that, the late 80s? Mm-hmm. I heard that later in the Sea organization, like, it didn't even matter. Like, you do something to get in trouble. Like, you're just busted. It doesn't matter what your statistics are. So when we were there, it was a little bit of a, I don't know, Sea Org light.
Yeah, compared, yeah.
Compared to that. But if you can imagine having that kind of pressure on you every single day, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. that you have to produce more than you did the week before, or you become convinced that I am this just piece of crap and I'm trying to stop Scientology because I'm not working to the level that I need to be. I saw somebody on one of the Facebook groups ask a question or a comment. The gist of it was, I don't remember exactly what it said, but the gist was, couldn't you just say I'm doing the best that I can?
Hell no. No. Not allowed.
There is no excuse in Scientology for not producing.
Right.
For having statistics that would be down.
Even as a kid, as a teenager, most of the time I was in the Sea Org, so minor.
Yeah.
And being a kid, and told that, no, you can't go to Disneyland because this 1 week your stats were down.
Yeah, forget about the whole
year.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It just, the pressure is crazy. The week in Scientology organizations and the Sea organization goes from Thursday at 2:00 to the following Thursday at 2:00. So Thursday mornings on the base were just this craziness with everyone trying to do what they could to get their statistics up over the previous week. I think it took me, I don't know how many years after leaving to where I stopped seeing Thursdays that way. Because I still felt this pressure, this incredible pressure, even though it was after we had left Scientology. I want to say it was maybe like 6-7 years before I finally stopped thinking about Thursdays in terms of Thursday at 2:00, the week ending, I have to get my statistics up.
Wow. That
constant pressure.
You can see a pattern here, what we're talking about with why we would have PTSD.
Yeah.
I had nightmares and I couldn't sleep. This is me being a teenager in the Sea Org. Mm-hmm. And there's just nothing you can do about it. You just have to keep going.
Yeah, you have to keep going. You kind of get into this state of mind of it's just survival mode. At one point, I was promoted, traded to a higher organization. I went into middle management, which was the Continental Liaison Organization, as it was called, and they ran Scientology for the Western United States. So I didn't want to go. I don't even remember how I ended up there. But it was, for most Sea organization members, I think you want to get promoted, you want to move up. I did not. I did not, because I knew I kind of had, like, considering the environment, a somewhat of a good thing going here. And again, I was like, by anyone else's standard, I think outside of Scientology, my work would have been considered exceptional. But by Sea Org standards, I was kind of a slacker because I didn't believe in the staying up all night thing. And I pushed back on a lot of that. And frankly, I'm surprised I even got as far as I did.
Yeah.
Like,
you got away with a lot of stuff.
I know.
And saying things. And that makes sense. But I could never, my brain didn't work that way. I was just subservient, quiet.
I would use So in the Sea Organization and in Scientology, anything that L. Ron Hubbard says is gospel. Like, that's the rule. He even wrote policies on how we should wash a car, how you should do laundry, and then that's how everybody does it. And there were a lot of violations of supposedly what his policy was, like about keeping schedules. And this staying up all night stuff wasn't part of existing policy, but it was done all the time. And I remember having a messenger come to my door really late at night, banging on it. I get up and answer the door, and she's like, you need to be on your post. You need to be downstairs at your job, blah, blah, blah. This is what we're doing. And I'm like, no, it's late. It's off schedule to do that. And per policy, blah, blah, blah. Like, I basically would use church policy to stop policy. Exactly. And I don't know how I got away with it for as long as I did, because honestly, I don't know. It was amazing how I didn't end up on like the Rehabilitation Project Force, which is like the punishment camp that Sea Org members would be sent to for reindoctrination.
That is the lowest of the low.
Absolutely the lowest of the low. And I think in large part it was because when I would push back, I would be fairly pleasant about it. I wasn't a screamer. I wasn't getting all emotional. I'd just be kind of matter of fact about it. And I think I just had a way of breaking through. Like, I still can see her face, this woman, when she came to my door. And I was telling her this, super senior to me. And you could see, like, she realized like what I was saying was true. It kind of broke through a little bit of the brainwashing where it was like, well, wait a minute. Yeah, you're right. It says over here, L. Ron Hubbard says you should get sleep. You should be taking care of yourself. But none of that actually gets done.
Right.
Instead, other policies get enforced. They just pick and choose, which I suppose is like a lot of religions, right? You can pick and choose what you believe in a certain doctrine. And in Scientology and the Sea Organization, the vast majority of the time, they are following what L. Ron Hubbard says to do. And a lot of what he said was wacko. But there's that added twist when your statistics need to be gotten up. Now, when you got married, was I already out of there? Or was I still there? I feel like I might have been there.
Already.
Well, you were 18.
In Seattle.
1920. Yeah, you're right. I would have just moved. So I got married when I was 17. And I had a miscarriage. I don't remember if you were there for that or not. I didn't even know that I was having a miscarriage because I didn't know what it was. And I think we got married in June or July, and I was turning 18 in September. So I was probably 18 when I had the miscarriage. I just know I was working, and then I thought I was getting my period. It was it was really painful. And I thought they were really bad cramps. And I went downstairs, and at the time, do you remember George? This is when I was still at the Pacific Base Crew. I was still there. I was working in the dining room.
The galley
yes.
guy?
Yeah. George was my senior, and I went into his office, and I was like, I don't know what's going on, but my stomach hurts really bad. And you got to remember, we weren't really raised. I always felt like we were these feral kids who kind of raised ourselves to a degree. No one really sat us down and said, I mean, obviously I knew how babies were made. You know, we had cable.
Right.
But the timing of it all and when you get your period or even what a miscarriage was, I had no idea. And I was bleeding so much, and I was downstairs going through this just pretty much by myself. And I ended up going to the Sea Organization's doctor, who was down the road.
Dr. Dink.
Dr. Dink, who I think he died years ago. And he was also L. Ron Hubbard's doctor. That is like the one doctor I think we were allowed to see. And it was it like a mile away down the road?
Yeah, it was walking distance. I mean, I wouldn't say it was walking distance. It's probably 1 or 2 miles.
Yeah. Well, I had to walk.
Yeah, I had to walk too.
Walk while having a miscarriage to the doctor and get it taken care of. And he basically told me, I remember he said that if something's wrong or going on, it's your body's way of kind of taking care of it. And then he put me on birth control because in the Sea Organization, a rule had come out saying that Sea Org members were not allowed to have children. And if you had a child, you were sent away from the Sea Organization to a smaller, failing Scientology church, which is how I ended up in Seattle. But this topic, this subject of coerced abortions in this organization was huge. It happened to me after I had the miscarriage. I was kind of, I wanted to have a baby. It made me realize that, oh my gosh, like I lost a child. And I always knew I wanted to be a mom, but then that CERC rule came out and then you couldn't. So my husband and I weren't taking precautions. It was kind of like we were just, run it up the flagpole, see who salutes. And I did end up getting pregnant again. And we're coming up on about 40 minutes. So I think we're going to wrap this up. But when we talk again, let's talk about the coerced abortion in the C organization, how women were put under intense pressure to abort their children, whether they wanted to or not. Well, they were put under pressure if they didn't want to, if you wanted to keep your baby. Very ironic, being that L. Ron Hubbard in his teachings is anti-abortion. And we'll go ahead and share what happened, because that happened to me when I ended up getting pregnant. I was already promoted to that other organization. And it was insane what happened. And then the same thing happened to you later on when you were 18 and was pregnant and married. Because keep in mind, any C organization member who's getting pregnant is married.
Right.
But you were still put under so much pressure to abort the child, because if you kept it, you would have to leave, and then they lose their free labor. So we're going to wrap it up now, but I think we're going to go ahead and we'll pick up with that maybe the next time. That's a pretty intense topic, and I think we're going to need more than a few minutes to delve into it. I will say this: if you want to learn more about that, you can Google it. C organization, Scientology coerced abortion. I participated in a story with the Tampa Bay Times after leaving Scientology with my daughter, Shelby, who obviously I didn't get the abortion because there she was. Back then my name was Natalie Hagamo. But it's really something that I think speaks to helping people understand what that environment was like and how far it actually went and why it creates PTSD in people today. We're out. I mean, you've been out longer than I have. I've been out for like over a decade now. I think maybe 13 years. But this is the first time Lana and I have ever sat down and talked about this. So it kind of really, and it's taken, I think, this amount of healing and, for you, therapy and working through so much. So we hope you join us again each Friday. We're sharing, these are the reasons why going through this experience and coming out of Scientology and finding community and connection afterwards, I'm so amazed by the way that people connect and what real community is. And it has everything to do with having grown up in Scientology and gone through that. So we're going to share more about that. So thank you, Lana, for joining again.
Sure.
So tune in during the week. Also, I drop other episodes about the ways people create community and connection, which is the main thing this podcast is about. But again, on Fridays, and for the time being, as long as she will, Lana's going to join me and help kind of work through and share the story. And like I said, it's the first time we're talking about this with each other as well. And for our children who are grown now, it's the first time they're hearing a lot of this too. And I guess it's the first time some of you are hearing it too. So we hope you join. If you have any questions for us at all, you can reach me at natalie@tonkatalk.com. So for now, thank you, and I'll talk to you later.